Welcome to the UIL Student Activities Conference for 2020. I'm Gail Herman from Sulphur Springs High School in Northeast Texas, and it's my pleasure to share with you some information about the two UIL essay contests. First is the Barbara Jordan Historical Essay Competition. This contest was established in 1995 and it moved to UIL academics in the 2011-12 school year. The other essay contest is the Latino History Essay Contest, and it became a part of UIL academics in school year 2012-13. Now, these contests have many similarities. For instance, they're both open to students in grades 9 through 12 who attend UIL member high schools. The essays also must focus on historically underrepresented groups. They must describe contributions to the history or culture of Texas. The length is 1,500 to 2,500 words, and the essay must be research-based. Well, you may wonder, who was Barbara Jordan, and why is an essay contest named for her? Well, Barbara Jordan was a Texan, and she was a person of many firsts. For example, she was the first African American state senator in the United States since 1883. She was the first African American woman elected to the Texas State Senate, and the first African American woman to preside over a legislative body. The first African American woman in the 20th century elected to Congress from the Deep South, and she was the first African American keynote speaker at a Democratic National Convention. Barbara Jordan was known for being a very intelligent thinker, and she was also known for being a very gifted and impassioned speaker. She had a way with words, so it's very appropriate for an essay contest to be named in her memory. The theme for the Barbara Jordan essay competition is African Americans in Texas, past and present. For your essay, you would focus on an individual or a group who is not well known, but who has made a significant contribution to African American history or culture in Texas. And your goal would be to add material to the historical record of African Americans in Texas. You may choose to focus on an individual who is not well known outside your own community, but who made important contributions in culture, in education, in politics, and so forth. Those contributions might have affected primarily your community, or they might have had a broader impact on the whole state of Texas. An essay will not be disqualified if it focuses on a person who is arguably well known to some. However, each year, some topics are written on by several different students. So if you can find a lesser known subject who has had an impact, your essay might stand out from others if you choose that lesser-known subject. Keep in mind that you might also focus on a person or group who played an important but not necessarily widely known role in a larger event or movement. Now, for the Latino history essay, you should address the theme of historical and cultural legacies of Latinos in Texas history. You should focus on a prominent or relatively unknown Latino individual, organization, or movement in Texas history. So this is probably the primary distinction in the criteria for the two essay contests. For the Latino essay, you may select a prominent Latino individual, organization, or movement. For the Barbara Jordan essay, you want to select someone who is relatively unknown, but who still had a tremendous impact. Now, for the Latino history essay, you want to demonstrate how the subject significantly influenced today's Latino communities. An essay based on original research should, as with the Barbara Jordan contest, add material to the historical record of Latinos in Texas. So how do you find a subject for your essay? Well, the first step should be to look at your own community. Talk to people you know. Talk to your parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, family friends, teachers, librarians, local genealogists, members of the clergy, community leaders, local government officials, really whoever you can think of who might be able to give you a lead. And you might also come across a good subject simply by reading the newspaper or searching the internet. You should evaluate potential subjects carefully to determine what their influence has been. One of the most important things to consider is, were the person's efforts far-reaching? Did the person's accomplishments and influence reach outside, for example, your immediate family and your friends? Your subject may have affected your family and your friends, but your subject should also have had an effect on your community or even the entire state. The subject's influence must have reached beyond a small group of people, and this is extremely important for you to keep in mind. That word far-reaching is very important. Whoever you choose to write about should be a person who had a far-reaching impact. To do your research, you need to recognize that valid historical research can rarely be done using only the internet. You need to look for opportunities to conduct an interview with your subject. If the subject is deceased, then you need to look for people who knew that person or worked with that person and interview them about what the person's effect was on them and on the state. Now, there are two types of sources that you may come across in your research. First of all, you have primary sources, and it's highly recommended that you use primary sources as you conduct your research. Primary sources provide first-hand information. They consist of things such as journals or diaries, speeches, letters, interviews, family papers, historical records of various types. For instance, you might check public, school, and university libraries. Genealogical societies maintain records that might be helpful to you. Also, county courthouses contain records that could possibly be of use. Eyewitness accounts are also considered to be primary sources, as are creative works such as writing, video, or photography. Now, you will probably also need some secondary sources to provide context and background for your essay. Secondary sources are often thought of as books, encyclopedias, articles in periodicals, that is, magazine articles, articles in scholarly journals, newspaper articles, websites, newspaper archives, and frequently newspapers do have archives of their previous editions, and those could be of benefit to you as well. Now, you want to evaluate your sources very carefully. For example, I know that your English teachers have probably told you, don't use Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not considered to be a scholarly source. You also need to resist the temptation simply to use whatever pops up first when you do an internet search. You want to try to find the very best sources that you can find. So keep in mind that generally sites that are associated with universities, with government entities, or other reputable organizations are better choices. You also need to document your sources appropriately. For these contests, you need to use Modern Language Association or American Psychological Association guidelines. Entries that do not include source citations and a complete bibliography will not be accepted. Now, if you have a source that needs some explaining, you might consider an annotation in a bibliographical entry, but an annotated bibliography is not a requirement. Well, how are the essays judged? First of all, the essays are evaluated to see if they meet the basic criteria of the contest. In other words, are they on topic? Is the topic appropriate? Is the required length there 1,500 to 2,500 words? Has the topic been researched, and has the topic and have the sources been documented? So the essays or the entries that make it through this preliminary step then are handed off to judges who evaluate the entries and provide comments that will be returned to contestants. Judges nominate essays to be considered as state finalists, and then from these that the judges put together, a selection committee determines the state finalist from among those nominees. State finalists are invited to and recognized at a reception and awards ceremony at the state meet, and there are 12 finalists named in each contest. Finalists receive framed certificates that are very nice, by the way. Then the top 6 winners in each contest are announced, and those who earn 1st through 6th place receive medals in addition to the framed certificate. The top 6 winners in each contest earn points toward the state academic championship for their school, and you can see there the point breakdown. 6th place earns 1 point, 1st place earns 10 points. Another perk is that those students who are identified as finalists in both contests become eligible to apply for Texas Interscholastic League Foundation scholarships. The TILF gives away about $1 million in scholarships annually. So if you were to become a finalist, that is, if you were named one of the top 12 in one of the contests, you would be eligible to apply for these scholarships, and they may be used at Texas colleges and universities. Something else that is of note is that the winning essays are archived at the University of Texas at Austin. Those who are finalists in the Barbara Jordan competition have their essays archived at the Briscoe Center for American History. This center is named for a former governor of Texas, Dolph Briscoe. And the essays of state finalists in the Latino contest are archived as part of the Nettie Lee Benson Latin American Collection, which is part of the University of Texas libraries. So if you are a finalist in either contest, your work becomes a part of the permanent record of the history of Texas, and that's kind of exciting. So, when is the deadline? Each year the deadline is about mid-February. This coming year, it will be February 17th, 2021, and you submit your entry electronically. If you go to the UIL website, you will find complete instructions for how to do that, and it's best to submit your essay as a PDF. Don't put your name or your school name on your paper. When you submit it through this UIL website, your identity will be tied to your paper, so they will know whose paper is whose. And essays from all 6 classifications are judged together, so it doesn't matter what size school you attend, whether it's a 1A or a 6A. All of the Barbara Jordan essays are judged in a pool together. All of the Latino History Contest essays are judged in a pool together. And then the 12 finalists are selected, and then those who earn first through sixth are identified. Well, let's think about some writing tips here. One thing is that your essay needs to be enjoyable and insightful to read. We are accustomed to thinking of research as being boring and dry, but it doesn't have to be, and in fact, it shouldn't be. You should write with voice, and that means making your subject come alive for your reader. You know, when the reader finishes your essay, he should feel that he really understands the subject about which you have written. That person should have come to life for your reader. So you need to choose effective diction. You need to avoid vague word choices. You need to vary your sentence structure. If every sentence is structured in the same way, your essay will soon become monotonous and boring, and you don't want that. Incorporate quotations skillfully. If your subject is still living, you will undoubtedly want to quote your subject. You might be able to find quotations from your subject even if the subject is deceased. And if you interview people who have been influenced by your subject, you'll want to quote those people. So you want to clearly attribute those quotations, and you want to incorporate them so that your writing flows smoothly. Another important consideration is that you should provide appropriate background about your subject. And that's part of just kind of introducing your subject to your reading audience. Have an interesting introduction with a clear thesis statement that pulls readers into your essay and makes them want to continue reading. If your introduction is interesting, then readers will want to keep reading your essay to learn more about your subject. Now, here is a sample introduction for your consideration. This introduction comes from the second place Latino essay from 2018-19, written by Anne Marie Gunn. The title is Ruben Rodriguez, Sharing the Simple Joy of Writing. Ruben Rodriguez is the state director for the UIL Ready Writing Contest. And so he was the topic of this essay. Let's look at the paragraph together. The American transcendentalist Henry David Thoreau wrote, "We cannot write well or truly, but what we write with gusto. The body, the senses, must conspire with the mind. Expression is the act of the whole man, that our speech may be vascular." And there's the attribution. There's where the quote came from. Whether it is produced by the scratch of a pencil on a pad of paper or the clicking of computer keys, wholehearted writing, such as that which Thoreau describes, is the kind valued by Ruben Rodriguez, State Contest Director for UIL Ready Writing, educator, AP English Language Consultant, advocate of writing for the simple joy of writing, and particular fan of Thoreau. Just as Thoreau was called to observe nature at Walden Pond, Ruben Rodriguez has found his calling in education, demonstrating to students and to other educators through the unifying qualities of language that human beings are much more alike than different. So I think you'll agree that this is a solid introductory paragraph, but let's look at it and see what makes it a good example. First of all, the quotation from Thoreau is appropriate since the subject of the essay has a particular fondness for Thoreau and his writings. And the quotation itself is about writing, and this is something that is very important to Mr. Rodriguez and that has influenced his life tremendously, and in turn has allowed him to influence the lives of countless others. Another thing that I think makes this writing effective is just a simple strategy. The alliteration with pencil on a pad of paper clicking of computer keys just adds a nice little touch to the sentence in which those phrases appear. Just adds a little sparkle to the writing. And then you will see that in the thesis, which is at the end of the introductory paragraph, Thoreau is mentioned again. So Thoreau becomes a unifying feature of the introductory paragraph. But you have a very clear thesis statement. Rodriguez has found his calling in education. And so that prepares us as readers to learn about all the ways that Ruben Rodriguez has assisted people in learning to write better, has assisted teachers in teaching, has helped students through his work with the UIL, etc. So it's an introduction that I think makes you want to keep reading because it makes Mr. Rodriguez sound like someone about whom you'd like to learn more. And that's what you want your introduction to do, to very clearly express what your subject is, to point out why the subject is interesting, and to make your audience want to read more. All right, some other suggestions for success. Be sure that you remember the importance of transitions in your essay. Transitions are like highway signs on the road. They smooth things out for your reader. They show connections between ideas. They make your paper flow better. So transitions are very, very important. When you are finished writing a draft of your essay, I recommend that you read it out loud. When we read silently, we read faster than when we read out loud. And sometimes if a word is missing, we automatically insert that word. We see what we expect to see when we're reading our own writing silently. But when we read it out loud, we have to slow down. And sometimes we can hear mistakes that we failed to see. For instance, you may start reading a sentence and you realize when you're hearing it that it's not worded as well as it should be, that there's some awkwardness about it. Similarly, you may hear awkward repetitions. I know that when I have asked students to read passages that they wrote aloud to me, sometimes they wouldn't even finish reading it. They would stop because they heard something wrong or they heard something awkward and they knew that they needed to address it. So I always recommend reading writing out loud when you're able to do that. And certainly for this contest, you would be able to since you have months to prepare. You also need to double check your documentation and your bibliography. It is so easy to make a mistake. You need to be very, very careful and accurate about this and be sure that you have cited, the correct website or the correct article, the correct page number, the correct person. Just double and triple check everything to do with your documentation to make sure that you have done it correctly. Now, it doesn't matter whether you choose MLA or APA guidelines to follow. Just pick one of those, the one that you're more comfortable with or that you know more about, and stick with it. But be sure that you follow the guidelines exactly. Another important thing is that you need to start early. This is a project where you need some time. You need some time to locate a subject. You need time to do research to see if that subject is viable. And if you determine that the subject will work, then you're going to need to do more reading about your topic. You're going to need time to set up interviews, to organize your materials and ideas, and then to write and edit the essay itself. So it's a doable project, but it's a pretty big project, and it will demand some of your time. But as I said, it is doable if you start early and you don't try to rush it and knock it all out at the last minute. So just try to start early. And then I can't stress enough the importance of proofreading. Just really, really look over your paper very closely and try to catch any type of error that might be there, because you want your paper to reflect all your hard work and to be something that you can be proud of and that the judges will be interested in reading and that anyone else would be interested in reading and would appreciate. Here are some websites that you can turn to for help with formatting your essay. The MLA format is addressed on Purdue University's online writing lab website, the OWL, which you may already be familiar with. Also, you can go to style.mla.org, and you will find a very helpful website where you can actually type in questions that you have about MLA format and find the places on the website that will answer those questions. For APA, I recommend that you use the Purdue OWL website for help. Now, there are a couple of things to think about in connection with your formatting. First of all, MLA guidelines call for a heading on the first page of the essay and for headers for the author's last name to appear in a header in the upper right-hand corner of each page. Well, for this contest, your name doesn't need to appear on your paper. So you need to omit the heading and you need to omit your last name from your headers. Just number your pages in the upper right-hand corner and center your title at the top of the first page of your text. For APA format, normally a cover sheet and an abstract are called for. For this contest, neither is necessary. So simply center your title at the top of the first page of your text, number your pages in the upper right-hand corner of each page. But other than these two exceptions, please carefully follow either MLA or APA format. Now you can find sample papers for both formats on the Purdue OWL website and on the MLA website. So Purdue has examples for both, and MLA, of course, has sample papers for MLA format. And you need to follow the latest edition of each one of these guidelines. For MLA, the 8th edition is the current one. It came out in 2016. The 9th edition is supposed to come out in April of 2021, so those guidelines will take effect for next year's competition. For APA, you need to follow APA 7, which came out in 2019. Here's a link that will take you to the judge's evaluation form, which might be helpful to you. You could look at it and you could see exactly the criteria that the judges are going to evaluate your essay on. Now, there are many advantages of competing in these contests, and I've touched on some of these, but to reiterate, perhaps the most exciting is simply learning the story and the contributions of your subject. It's always exciting and interesting to learn what people have contributed to their state. Also, this is a wonderful opportunity for you to improve your research skills. And if you are a college-bound student, you will be doing research in college. So this is an extra opportunity for you to learn more about how to do that, and it will help make you feel better prepared when you go to college. Another way that you can grow as an individual from participating in one or both of these contests is that you have an opportunity to develop interpersonal and interview skills. Maybe you're a little bit shy, or maybe you're very outgoing. If you are a little bit shy or hesitant to meet people, this is an opportunity for you to get out there and learn that you too can meet people. You learn how to talk to people. You learn how to ask questions. You learn how to interview others. And these are good skills to have. Obviously, you have the opportunity to improve your writing skills. And again, what wonderful college preparation that is. But that's just preparation for life too. And then there is the joy of seeing a project through to completion. You know, you start it, You find your subject, you do your research, you conduct interviews, you do more research, you draft your paper, you revise your paper, you check your documentation. It's a very worthwhile project, and at the end, you are going to feel good about it if you have really given your best to this project. It is a project that builds self-confidence. It makes you feel that you can take on challenges like this and be successful at them. And then consider the fact that in writing about someone who has contributed to Texas history or culture, that you are preserving an important part of our heritage as Texans. So it's a worthwhile thing to do. And then, as I've mentioned previously, if you're a finalist, then you earn the right to compete for those TILF scholarships and the opportunity to have your work archived at UT Austin. And then you might earn some points. If you place in the top 6 places in either contest, you might earn some points for your school toward the state academic championship, which is very exciting. The contest director for both contests is Ms. Lisa Parker, and she would welcome any questions that you have, and you can see her email here, lparker@uiltexas.org. So good luck. I hope that I have interested you in one or both of these contests. I certainly enjoy being involved in them, watching my students do research and learn and grow. And it's a great opportunity for you to learn about contributions to Texas history or culture and to share your knowledge with others. So again, good luck in all your UIL endeavors this year. Good luck with this unusual school year that we're having. And I wish the best for you as you start looking for a subject to write about for the essay contests.